each ingredient's cognitive enhancing compound, carefully selecting the most desirable parts of each plant and mushroom to create a harmonious blend that supports your mental clarity and focus. But that's not all. They infuse each bottle with personal intention of improving the lives, the minds, and overall greatness of each of their customers. Because of their commitment to your well-being every step of the way, you're going to get an exclusive 25% off your order via www.adentiaherbals.com using our code Total Disclosure at checkout. All the links will be in the description or on the screen. And I've had Mick on the show. He's a friend of mine. A good guy, just misunderstood. It's like if Mick West came out and like had a story about how he had a source and now all of a sudden, he's like questioning it, right? Like he's like, this shit might be real. Like it's kind of like one of those moments, and it's really crazy to see because this guy has been one of the people that people go to get debunkings from. So to see him make this switch has been remarkable. And I think everyone in the UFO community should take note of it because it's not only just a good story, but if true, the implications they're only adding to what we're saying. Something's on its way. Something's here, but something else is on its way.
Well, I think that's very interesting about Professor Simon Tai because he's British. He lives in the southwest of France, though, but he's British and he's really popular in the UK. And so I wrote a letter to the King of England last June. And because, with all of my research that I've done, I found that, the royalty were basically seen, all royalty, they were basically, the whole point of them were to be the interim between the people and the gods. Well, if we know that the gods are extraterrestrials, that means royalty was here to be the interim between the people and the extraterrestrials. They had more of their genetics. That's why they were known as blue bloods. That's why they always interbred with each other. To keep their line pure. There's a whole history to that. It's very well documented. Most people are aware of these basics. So I wrote to King Charles after everything calmed down, after his coronation. I mean, just within his coronation, I saw so much that was that really indicated that he had a knowledge that there is an extraterrestrial presence within the Bible. I mean, he had the actual rock, Jacob's rock, where, do you know the story of Jacob's ladder, where Jacob, he watched as a whole bunch of angels, which we are not of this earth, right? So they're by definition.
So again, looking at it through today's scope and lens, we could say those are...
Yeah. Extraterrestrials. So Jacob watched as all of these extraterrestrials, I can't remember if they ascended or descended from heaven, but they were going one way or the other between here and there. And he laid his head on a rock, and he marked that spot.
And now people go do it, right?
Well, and now they have that rock. So when a lot of people, when there was a mass exodus from the Middle East to the British Isles and, other places throughout Europe, they took a lot of these artifacts with them. That was a big part of the Knights Templars too, was to secure that passage for people between Europe, the British Isles, and the Middle East. Well, one of the artifacts they took was Jacob's ladder. And the king actually had that, or the rock from Jacob's ladder, rather, that Jacob had laid his head on. The King of England actually had that rock underneath his throne that he was sitting on during his coronation. I mean, that's huge. Why, that
Wow.
he really had an artifact, a real world artifact from one of the most well documented uh, extraterrestrial.
Where did she go?
Here? Oh, am I
You
here?
just dropped out on me there a little bit.
Oh, I didn't mean to. I didn't do anything. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to be talking about this, Ty. I don't know.
Yeah, you pissed someone off in the
Uh-oh.
NSA.
Well,
Your
maybe I
NSA
should just make it short then. So I wrote a
NSA
letter.
agent Phil was like, "Nope,
Yeah, I know.
done."
They're like, mute her, kick her out. So I wrote a letter to the King of England about extraterrestrials, UFOs, and disclosure, because the King of England or the Queen of England, the head monarch, is also the head of the Church of England. Because remember, they have their own church with their own beliefs. So I wrote a letter, and I just, I said I'm a researcher, in the United States. I've been doing this for a very long time. And I told them a little bit about my family history, which they would know. I think I've talked about it a little bit on both sides of my family. I am the great, 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 great niece of the first Bible translator, William Tyndale, who gave his life to translate the Bible into English. And he did that in defiance of the Pope at the time and the King of England, who was King Henry VIII, unfortunately, and he ordered his death.
So what he did was a very treasonous act, but one that allowed the masses to, one that allowed more people to be able to read it.
Yeah, his famous quote was that he wanted the boy who plows the fields to be able to have just as much access to reading the Bible as anybody in the church. Because at the time, Bibles were these great, big, huge, giant tomes, and they were chained down in the churches.
Right. The printing press wasn't there yet. These are very hard to come by.
And so just as the printing press was coming out, William Tyndale, he dedicated his whole life. He dedicated his whole life to translating the Bible. He learned all of the languages. He learned the Hebrew. He learned the Greek. He did the first translation into English, and
That's amazing.
yeah, and he gave his whole life for that. And when I first learned that, I was and I was actually published in the UK in the so there's still a Tyndall journal in his honor, and I was published in that journal, which was a great honor of mine to be published in the Tyndall Society Journal. And then, at the time I was thinking, what could have motivated a man? What could have made him so motivated to learn all of these languages, to go to school his whole life? He never married. All he did was dedicate his life to this one mission. And I thought, well, what could motivate him to be so committed to this one act? Even after he was arrested, he was put in prison, and the only thing he asked for was a pen and paper so he could continue his translation.
God.
Yeah. And
He just didn't waver.
And then I thought, well, geez, that what have I been doing? I've dedicated 35 years out of 45 years of my life to this topic, despite suffering some consequences for this, and I was inspired by a childhood event, and then ongoing events throughout my life. And I really wonder, it really makes me wonder if William Tyndale was also an experiencer, because every Tyndale family member, they were all experiencers. in my family. And so it really makes me wonder if William Tyndall also had some sort of divine intervention that inspired him.
Well, do you ever notice that this is like the one topic that if you do have an experience, you drop everything and you don't stop until you're dead. It's like the only thing I've ever seen where once someone gets into it, they never come back. Like, and it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. They just never come back. They're on a mission. And so this, like, you see it with like the guys from the Nimitz, right? Fravor, right? He had an experience. Now he's dedicated to figure out what he saw, right? Mario Woods, same story. It's the same story. You go down the list. Each person that has an encounter with this phenomenon does not stop searching for answers until the day they die. It's the only thing.
It's sort of like that guy in Close Encounters and his mashed potatoes. It was so seared into his mind that he was sitting there making sculptures out of his mashed potatoes with
literally
what he saw, because it was so seared. Yeah, I think it's because, and last night I was researching about Teresa, the Catholic saint Teresa of Avila, and she was the first woman to receive a doctorate from the church for her work. So technically she's Dr. Teresa Avila, and she's the most famous mystic from the Catholic Church. And her experiences, she was levitating. People saw this. The experiences she had went on and on and on. And I think that once people get a taste of, once people have an experience that is really powerfully paranormal or divine in nature, it is so outside. So I think there's two tracks people can take, Ty. I think one track is people will completely deny it. It scares them. They don't want to talk about it ever again. I think there is that track. But then there's the other track of people who say, wow, this is so incredible. This is the most miraculous experience I've ever had in my life. They want to have another one. They want to understand what it was. They want it to happen again. They want to know why them. I saw it with people, that I worked with in MUFON for years and years and years. So yeah, it's very powerful. And that's how you know that they've really encountered something that it changes people's lives. It really does. And I think, previously, a lot of those people we would have referred to as saints. I think a lot of the saints were experiencers, and abductees.
Like Chris Bledsoe, he'd be a saint.
Yeah, right.
He would 100% be a saint if it was a different time period.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes, that's a good example. And I think a lot of these people, in another time period, like you said, they would have been saints. And so while we're on the topic kind of of these paranormal, paranormal encounters, I kind of wanted to talk about this case in Utah real fast.
Yeah, please. Give us the full breakdown.
Yeah, before we get into CERN, so there was it's a very sad case. It's a case of child abuse that happened in Utah, and it was heard around the world. It was reported on around the world. Ruby Franke and her female business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, and thank you, DC Contra, I appreciate it. So Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrandt